So just before we start the show, and I hope you guys don't mind me doing this.
We're forced into it.
Uh,
We've got no choice.
so
Couldn't say no. So happy to do it.
I just wanted to mention my national tour, which kicks off early May.
Yep.
We put a whole lot of shows out there. I think it was 30 for the year across Australia and New Zealand. And I think we were allowed with government restrictions because we covered like 60% of every venue. So we sold out most of the venues. I went, cool, sold out. We told everyone to sold out. But now government restrictions are easing and it's now up into 100%. So there's like 40% more tickets at each venue, if this makes sense what I'm saying. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say here is there's plenty more tickets available. If you'd like to come along, Adelaide, Melbourne and Perth kicking it off in May, mid-May. So go to resilienceproject.com.au and you can find all the details there for shows all across the country and also New Zealand. I don't know if we've got any listeners in New Zealand. Maybe we don't, but there you go.
We do.
We do?
Check the...
Okay.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
cool.
We've got a couple of percent.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Well, my mum and dad really want to come. So can
$30 each.
Yep. Yep. I'll tell my dad. I'll tell my dad that his son couldn't get them tickets for.
They will get VIP tickets, and VIP tickets to this means they get to come and have beers with me afterwards in the green room.
Oh, they're cool with
Really?
that. That's okay.
Oh,
No, that's all right.
Just the regular.
They want to beat the traffic. Why wouldn't you? If you know how to get out quickly, why wouldn't you plan ahead?
Totally. So Resilience Project.
But no thank you to the VIP package. The meet and greet.
Resilienceproject.com.au, you'll find all the tickets to our shows for the remainder of the year. Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth to kick it off in a few weeks.
Yeah. Now let's go to the strangely placed voicemail from me. Hugh, hi, it's Ryan. I am so excited to record this new episode with Jamila Rizvi. She's incredible. But just a bit of bad news. I'm really sorry. I'm just running a little late. It's so embarrassing. I bought this cheap time machine online, and I think it's dodgy because it just sent me 15 minutes into the future without me even touching it, and now I'm going to be late. So I'm just... Stupid cheap time machine. Hugh, are you there? If this is still recording, I'm sorry. It just must have sent me a few seconds into the future. Look, I'll see you soon. I'm on my way. Hopefully this thing doesn't stuff with me again. Anyway, sorry again. It's Ryan from the podcast.
To call back, press 22. To replay message, press 1.
We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh van Cuylenburg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum. And this is The Imperfects. We're back. Again, without a plan to start the show with.
It's what we do best. Not have a plan.
Well, we're here now, so we may as well just keep talking from here on in. So, I mean, all of our episodes that we've done, they've all been great. Loved them all. But I think probably fair to say the episode with Ben Crow, which came out, 2 episodes ago, our first Academy of Imperfection, which we'll get into that in a sec. But that was a big episode, and there's been so much feedback from so many people. I don't know if you've probably experienced it, Hugh. A lot of
extraordinary, extraordinary levels of feedback, and like our mum, who I believe listens to all the episodes. I don't really know. We don't really talk to her about it much, but she called me to say, I'm just running late to get over Josh's, but that's okay. I'm imperfect, and I'm feeling good because I'm on the way to go and live my purpose, which is to show my grandchildren unconditional love. And she was buzzing, and it was so lovely. And I messaged Ben and gave him that feedback because it was really nice.
That's amazing. Because I've ever since that episode's come out, and even though no doubt we always we're all doing our best the best work we can do. We're trying our best, the three of us, no doubt about that. But since the Ben Crow one's come out, I feel like lots more people are listening now, and I feel like, I really need to try now. I feel like there's this extra little bit of pressure to make now we should start making it really good. We'll try. We'll try to. It just feels like there's a lot more ears on us.
Yeah, I felt that pressure as well when I saw the numbers come through on Ben's. I was like, are those people listening to the rest of the episodes? Are they good?
Yeah.
I hope they're good.
Yeah, I was all of a sudden like, okay, we're back on. What can we do? What can we do? Because people are listening, and we've set, Ben set a bar. There's a high bar there.
I was speaking to a friend of mine who's been listening to us from the start before this huge influx. She, Em is her name, she'd have to be close to one of our biggest fans. I was talking to her, and she was just couldn't stop talking about how good Ben Crow was. And while I was talking to her, I heard this, "G'day, Josh." And I turned around, and Ben Crow happened to walk past.
That's right.
And introduced himself to me and her, and I've never seen a person go from confident to more nervous in my entire life than she did.
It'd be like, I mean, probably
That's how good
her,
he is. He just turns up when you talk about him.
Yeah. It'd be just like if you were like, if someone was very religious, they're at church praying to God, and then who walks in? God. You're joking. You're joking. I gotta say, God, I am a massive fan. I'm nervous. I'm nervous that you're here. I don't even know what to say to you. Can I get a photo, or is that a bit weird?
Oh, dear. Well, hopefully one thing people are getting their heads around is we've introduced 2 new formats, and we're putting them in the order of, we're doing the OG, like original Imperfects, which is have a guest, we discuss what they're going through, all that kind of stuff.
That classic format you've known and loved for 10 episodes.
Then there's the Vulnerability House.
Yeah. Greatest pun of 2020.
Greatest pun of 2020. I probably won't be beaten. And then there's the Academy of Imperfection, which is where we have someone come in and they do most of the talking. Really, we just listen and we learn from them. Yeah. I think it might be causing a few bits of confusion for people.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Like we've basically only just started doing a podcast, even though we've been around for 2 years, haven't done many episodes. All of a sudden, let's introduce 2 new types of episodes within the normal podcast and not really make a big deal about them. Just release them.
Okay. Well, that's what I think is causing confusion. I've had two different people within the space of 5 days come up to me to comment on the podcast.
Yeah.
And both of them got our name wrong, but they were such good names.
What were the names?
So first of all, a lovely lady I know said to me, "Oh, I love it. She goes, so funny. Availability House. It's so good."
Well, it's not too bad.
Then
you are kind of making yourself available in a way.
And then the other one was, I got it a couple of days ago in Adelaide. A guy goes to me, good to see, we were just chatting once, but he said, who's the next episode on the Unapproachables?
The Unapproachables?
Went, he called us the Unapproachables.
That is a bad message we're sending
yes,
out.
Yes. Oh, shit, that's not your name. That's not what you are either. Sorry.
Because you know how you three are like so inaccessible and unapproachable? Yeah, that's why you called the Unapproachables, right? Maybe that wasn't his voice, but...
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
On the just on the theme of imperfection, while we're just been talking about... Well, it's the name of the podcast.
Yeah, you could really say that at any point of this podcast, any episode.
How's this for a very imperfect moment of mine? I was thinking of Josh because this guy turned up at the Astrac and I thought, oh, is that Horse? Josh has got a mate called Horse. I don't know why he's called Horse.
You don't know why? Does he know why?
I don't either, actually.
I feel like it's too obvious to be that one.
Yeah,
he's a very witty, funny guy. That'd be too...
No, it's not that.
Lame of a...
I can't say. I don't know.
Okay, well, anyway.
I should know. He'll be probably hurt that I don't know.
A guy was running laps of the Astrac and he kept looking at me when he was running past me. I was like, I think that's Horse.
Last time I saw... Is he a runner, Horse?
No.
He doesn't run with small men on his shoulders? You know? Because that could be it. Well,
I saw... Yeah, no little men on his shoulders. He was just... he was running like every time... Every time he ran past me, he looked like he wanted to talk to me. And I thought, it must be Horse. And then the last time he came around, he took out his headphones and looked at me. I was like, oh, we're going to talk here. And I was like, must be Horse. And I went, at the same time, I went, "Hey, Horse." And he went, "Love the podcast." "What'd you call me?" I was pretty sure it was him. And I went, "Horse? Horse?" He goes,
Horsey?
"Why'd you call me that?" And I went, and obviously it wasn't Horse. And I went, no, it's just... No, nothing. I was just a bit of a joke. But you like the podcast? He was so confused. Wow. He goes, "Yeah, I do. sorry, what was the horse thing? And I went, no, for some reason I didn't say, I thought you were a mate.
Yeah.
Well, not a mate. I thought you were my brother's mate.
Yeah, it's such an easy explanation.
No, it was so awkward because I think he was a bit nervous to come and say good day about the podcast.
Yeah.
And I've called him horse and he wanted to find out why. And for some reason, I didn't say, oh, you look like my brother's mate. I sort of went, no, it's just a bit of a joke, but yeah.
Yeah.
I pretended I meant it.
Well, because clearly it's probably fair enough that he would walk away thinking that I look like a horse. I've never known this, but this person's just said, g'day horse. Instant nickname.
Unbelievably awkward. Anyway, enough of my imperfections.
Well, we should move on to today's guest, and we're really lucky to have. So Jamila Rizvi is the guest today, and look, to be honest, I didn't know much about Jamila. You know, I love like the work she does now is just incredible, and I just think she's amazing. I don't know a lot about her backstory, about like the story she tells in this interview. I didn't know a lot about that at all. But wowee, what a woman.
Yeah, she's amazing. And this is an interview that I think I was a bit nervous about just because she, as a journalist, as a writer, as a presenter, like she's so good at this kind of thing, like conversations on and so I felt a lot of pressure throughout the interview, but gosh, she was wonderful. She even baked us chocolate chip cookies, which is just a future guest. That was very popular thing to do.
It's very smart. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about it whenever I go on a podcast next. I went on a podcast the other night and took McDonald's.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then they didn't really eat them that much. Like I took lots of chips and I thought this is going to be great. This can bring the house down.
Who was it? What was it?
It was the Daily Talk Show.
Right.
These are friends of mine. And I went on and they had the cheeseburgers that I brought, and then I had there was probably like 5 boxes of chips left over. And that was fine. Like I did bring 10 packets of chips.
How many people were there?
It was like, but I wanted it to be excessive. I wanted it to be like it's a chip party. You know, when someone arrives with too much McDonald's, it's a good night. You know, like when there's more McDonald's that you can eat. You know, I mean, McDonald's is not for everyone, and I'm not really a regular McDonald's person. But have you ever been at a party where someone just arrives with a bag of cheeseburgers?
Never.
I have.
Really?
Isn't it incredible? Oh,
it really lifts the dynamic of the night.
It does, and it's quite an affordable way to make everyone happy.
We are not sponsored by McDonald's. I should probably say this one.
We're not at all. But you know, everyone knows it's a pretty regular thing to eat McDonald's. Anyway, sorry. Back to Jamila. I'm sorry.
No, so I've been a big fan of Jamila's for quite some time. I remember being invited on to when she was hosting. I think it was like the lunch hour of the ABC, doing an interview with her, and I got a lot more nervous than I usually do. I'm just a big fan. So happy she was came on this podcast. And what you'll see here is that I suppose the advantage of having 2 people doing an interview, Josh was sort of sitting back and listening and asked some questions that I kind of felt like you could tell with her answers. They're things that she hadn't said out loud before, at least hadn't said them publicly before. Yeah. And I found that was, deeply moving, but also fascinating. So well done, Josh, for asking those questions.
Yeah, when it got to that bit, I was just like, my man. My man. Because she was impressed.
Yeah, she was.
She was impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's an incredibly impressive woman herself. And
But you came out looking really good of that, just so you know. Like
a lot better than me, that's for sure.
Well, if anyone's going to win that interview, Josh, you won.
Yeah, you did.
It's good to compare you and me in each interview from now on.
Yeah, that's good. We should get a vote going. God, nothing like a bit of brotherly rivalry.
We should probably say just a heads up there for anyone who is, I suppose, going through any serious illness, cancer, all that kind of stuff. There's some really graphic talk around her experiences with cancer, more specifically her brain tumour, but then also some serious chats around her mental health off the back of that as well. So just a heads up for everyone listening. But yeah, I really hope you enjoy this. She's obviously a very articulate person, but also fascinating to listen to. So hope you enjoy Jamila Rizvi. Go for it. Jamila.
It feels like we're all on a date, all three.
With a spotlight on top of us. Yeah.
Okay.
Jamila, thank you so much for joining us. We're overjoyed to have you here. My first question, I was thinking about you on So Friday night I went to the comedy festival and I saw a guy called Aaron Cheng. I don't know if you know Aaron
Yeah,
Cheng.
I do.
He does like his first 10 minutes is improv and he just asks people what they do. And for some really weird reason, I was sitting there thinking, how would Jamila answer this question? Like if he picked Jamila out and said, what do you do? Because he asked like 5 people like marketing, sales, teacher. How would you answer that question? What do you do?
It's a really good question because I struggle anytime anyone asks me that. I often get introduced as a journalist, which I personally feel a bit uncomfortable about because to me journalism has this, it's sort of rooted in being objective and I'm not. Like I have a strong perspective and a strong kind of social justice commitment, I suppose. So I'm not objective and I'm not interested in being objective. So I feel a bit weird about that word. Some people call me a commentator, which is gross. I don't want to be a commentator. I quite like equality advocate. I think that's cool.
Nice. Yep.
But I just do a little bit of
Author?
a lot of stuff.
Do you ever say author?
I'm an author. I still have imposter syndrome about that. I usually say I'm a writer.
Oh, yeah. But you've authored lots of things.
I know. But I just feel it sounds very impressive. Like when I hear author, I'm like, that's like Jane Austen and Charles Dickens and stuff. And I'm not that.
But you're a kids book author as well?
Yeah.
Kids book author? Is that what you say?
That's definitely not the term.
You write kids books as well? You do so much.
Yeah, I think I have ended up in a really fortunate position where I've created a career where I just dabble in lots of things and I pretty much just do what interests me. And I was stressing out to my husband about how busy I was last week and that I was struggling a little bit. And he said, well, you've got to cut through, find the bits that you don't actually enjoy and we've got to work out how to eliminate them. And I think for the first time in my life, there's nothing I'd eliminate. Like I'm really overdone, but I enjoy all of it.
So, but what do you enjoy the most? If you wake up and know you're doing a certain thing, whether it's writing or, I don't want to say commentating, but talking, whatever, like what do you enjoy most?
My perfect day would be writing in the morning when I'm fresh and awake and probably at my best. But I like to be done by 11 a.m. and go do other stuff.
Yeah, right. Because I saw you the other day at the Women's March in it. And you were like, there were people all around you and there's a fair bit of attention. I wanted to say hi to you and I was sort of like, I was standing around the periphery a bit and I was like, oh no, I feel a bit weird. I was like a bit too creepy just looking at you from the side, hoping that you'd see me. And I was like, but you were so in like flow, like you were so on. It was so impressive to watch you speak.
I think I like speaking. I really enjoy public speaking. There's no question about that. On a day like that, it was a bit different. It was less about enjoyment and more about determination to convey the specifics of what was going on to people because I was so angry. And I think a lot of people were angry, hence the number of people in that crowd. I think there were close to 10,000 that day. There was a feeling of quite deep fury, I think, of not being heard and of women's stories not being recognised or understood. I felt like I was on a mission that day. It was like I've got a job to do and I'm one of this group who gets to speak to my own experience and what I think is the experience of other women, and that's a real privilege, but it comes with a lot of responsibility. And I had that sort of pressure of today has to be good, you know?
Yeah. You're one of those people that when I speak to you, I feel a bit like people would see me and go, oh, he's the guy who talks about resilience. You're one of the people that when I speak to, I feel a bit silly, like as in because you've been through so much as well. And I always feel a bit like, oh, who am I to talk about resilience when I speak to someone like Jamila? You've definitely had your challenges. Probably one of the bigger ones has been your physical health. Can you talk people through your sort of experience of your illness and where you're at now?
Yeah. Well, firstly, that's really generous, but I think I know about my own resilience or lack thereof. I don't know about anyone else's, so I don't think you should be worried about it at all.
No, but I just remember we sat down for lunch. It would have been, it was about a year, maybe a bit over a year ago.
Would have been more than a year ago because of COVID.
Yeah.
Must have been 18 months.
Of course. Yeah. And we were chatting and you're asking me about resilience and I'm thinking, oh God, I just feel so uncomfortable like talking to someone like you about this. But yeah, I'd love to chat about your physical health if you're cool.
No, I'm totally up for it. I think the first thing I've got to say though is I don't think I've been very resilient.
Right.
I should tell a story. At the end of 2017, I was diagnosed with a really rare kind of brain tumour that affects about 1 in every 1.3, 1.4 million people. So not a lottery you want to win. And I had it removed via surgery through my nose, which is cool, right? It's cool in retrospect. It was not cool at the time, but it was cool. It is cool.
Is that one of the surgeries where you need to be awake for that?
No,
Okay.
I have not had awake brain surgery. Weirdly, though, I reckon I would have preferred that because I'm a control freak.
Oh.
And for me, the hardest part of brain surgery was that I might die and I might not even know. That sounds so stupid.
No, I know what you mean, though.
That's how I felt. I was like, I need to be in control and I'm not going to be in control. That was the hardest thing for me, despite the fact I had an extraordinary surgeon who could do brain surgery better than me. Like, what was I going to do? Be awake and give him some tips? Be like, hey, mate, I've got some thoughts. I did really badly in Year 10 science. Here's some suggestions.
So what do you mean they got it out through your nose?
So they went through my... This is a bit gory.
I don't mind.
All right, this is a gory warning for anyone listening.
Yeah.
Sub out now. Come back in a couple of minutes. So I was asleep, obviously, but my husband watched the whole thing on YouTube before I had the surgery, so he knew what was happening. So they basically go through your nose. They use an ENT surgeon as well as a brain surgeon. They cut a little hole in your skull where at the back of your nose it finally meets your skull. They remove the layers of tissue and they stick in not only the instruments to remove the tumour but cameras, and then they do the entire surgery watching it on a screen because they can't actually see what they're doing.
Oh, wow.
Whoa. It's like keyhole brain surgery, basically.
Nose hole brain surgery.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the first one from which I recovered incredibly well.
So when did you say that was? Sorry, 2000?
January 2018.
Okay, yeah.
I recovered really well. I was kind of sent away and told, we think you'll be fine now. There's a bit of tumour that we've left in there because if we'd got it, it would have caused a lot of disabilities, but you should be fine now. Like, go live your life.
Great.
80% chance you'll never have to worry about this again. It had grown back by July and quite aggressively. So that time in September I had to have a craniotomy, which is where they kind of cut open your head. So I've got a scar that runs, you can see the tip of it at the top half of my forehead, and it runs right around the side down past my right ear. So I had 57 staples in my head when I woke up. I didn't recover well from that because they had to be more aggressive because the tumour had proved so aggressive. A lot of damage was done to the part of my brain, which is a very densely populated part of the brain, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can have a brain tumour on the grey matter where not a lot happens, and you can cut that out and you pretty much operate quite similarly, other than the fact you've had big surgery. Whereas for me, to cut brain tumour off the parts of my brain the tumour was stuck to did a lot of damage. So I think recovering from that surgery was a lot harder because it wasn't just recovering, it was adjusting to quite significant disabilities. Then it grew back again. Isn't it a great story? Grew back again, and they sent me straight off for radiation treatment at the start of 2019. And so I had radiation to my brain every day through February, March, April, and a little bit of May, which was a lot easier than a surgery, but was still quite confronting, just going to the hospital every day, getting in that machine, putting the mask on. Looked a bit like Man in the Iron Mask, except looked kind of like Chuck Swipes, but hard on your face. That's what the mask looks like, if I could kind of draw a picture. It was really confronting experience, and that did more damage and is continuing to do damage. So the upside of that is since sort of the middle of 2019, I've had no tumour growth. It's only shrunk, and it appears to be, knock on all the wood, dead, according to my surgeons. But the radiation's done further damage, and that's still happening because the radiation's still active in my brain and will be for at least another year. It's still hitting new things. So I find it really hard when someone says to me, are you better now? Mm-hmm. Because firstly, tumour can always grow back. And even though I think it won't, I'm still kind of struggling through all this chronic illness and disabilities. And so it's hard to say I'm better because I'm not better. I'm never going to be better. I'm a completely different human being. And, you know, if it wasn't for science, my body shouldn't be alive. Like, my body isn't alive without the pills and the drugs that I take every day. And so, yeah, it's hard to describe yourself as all right.
Yeah, of course.
So that is my very sordid story.
So what are you adjusting to? You said it's more about one of the big parts is adjusting.
Yeah.
What are you adjusting? What are the things that are different for you now, if you don't mind me asking that?
I won't go through them all because it's a very, very long, boring list.
Okay.
But the three I find hardest day to day to manage. The first one is that my body doesn't produce cortisol anymore.
Right.
And cortisol is your stress hormone, which people generally talk about wanting to minimize, right? But you need cortisol. It's there for a reason. When you have a really stressful adrenal event where, perhaps you go to a funeral or you run a marathon or you are in a car accident, your adrenaline will get you through that period. And then your cortisol will increase to meet the adrenaline and bring you down slowly and sort of smooth it out for your body. I take synthetic cortisol, so I take a tablet. So if I don't take enough to meet what my body is going to go through that day, I go into what's called an adrenal crisis, in that my adrenaline goes up, and then instead of being brought down smoothly with the cortisol, it just crashes. And that usually brings my blood pressure down to about 60/40, and you've got about 36 hours before you die.
Right.
So you've got to get to hospital very fast, and it's an experience. And I've had that happen about 3 times since my radiation. I think I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at managing it. I think it'll happen less and less as I get more used to it. But it happened 3 times through COVID, which was really intense, having to go to emergency in the middle of a pandemic and, my husband not being allowed to be with me for a lot of it. And, it was a really stressful kind of period. So that's kind of one of the big ones. Another one of the big ones is pain. Like I take synthetic growth hormone and a couple of other drugs that just are really painful. Kind of feels like, did you have growing pains when you were a teenager?
In my knees, I did, yeah.
Yeah. It's like having that all over your body. So I feel it in my fingers, in my ankles, and I'm someone who used to be a really fit, active person, and it's very hard to be that now because I'm in a lot of pain a lot of the time. And then the third one, which I'm kind of embarrassed to admit is the thing I find hardest, because I'm someone who believes in body positivity and I don't like the pressures that are put on women to look a certain way. But I have a condition called hypothalamic obesity, which basically means the hypothalamus, which is an important part of your brain, has been impacted so that my body doesn't, my hunger doesn't work properly, my hunger signals don't work properly, I don't metabolize properly, and my body tries to store almost all energy as fat, which means I'm about 20 kilos bigger than I used to be, and there's not much I can do about it. In fact, it's taking a lot to keep me about the size that I am now. Most people gain about 80 kilos when they develop this condition, which is a lot. And so I'm in a weird position where my doctors are celebrating because they're like, 20 kilos is great. And I'm like, 20 kilos is a disaster.
Yeah.
And the problem is I think I am someone who's always been very good at talking about body positivity. I'd always felt kind of okay towards my body. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I had a pretty healthy relationship with it. I moved my body a lot. I ate well and enjoyed food when I wanted to. And now I think I have, I think my dietitians and my psychologists try not to put words on it, but I think I've developed a pretty severe eating disorder as a result, because it's hard to have no control, or at least it feels like I have no control when you are someone who likes to be in control.
Yeah, totally. What with when you say hunger, like there are no hunger signals, so you just don't know?
I'm always hungry.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Like we could sit down and have a 3-course meal and I will be hungry within about half an hour.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Gosh. So what does this do to your? Thanks for sharing that, because that's
all right.
I have so many questions off that. So you have a 5-year-old, is that right?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
He would want you to know he is almost 6.
Oh, yeah.
He is now saying 5 5/6 to
Wow.
people, just
very
so they
impressive.
know. It's really close.
So a birthday in 2 months then, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what's his name?
His name's Ruffy.
Ruffy. Okay. So I can't help but think about this, just having a son of a similar age. So do you explain all this to him?
Yeah.
And how hard is that?
Not in the language or the depth I've just explained it
Yeah,
to
of
you,
course,
because
yeah.
he wouldn't understand.
But he needs to know why mum's going to hospital. And,
Yeah, we have talked about it to him differently the whole way through. One of the first things we did when I got sick was my husband went and saw a child psychologist, and just got some tips, I suppose, to talking to a then almost 3-year-old about what was going on. And at 2.5, 3, you don't have a lot of understanding. But we were given some really excellent advice. The thing that has stuck with me that I always tell people who are unwell, who have young kids, is don't just say I'm a bit sick or mummy's a bit sick, because then the next time that kid has tonsillitis, they think they're going to die or need an operation in their brain.
Yeah.
You need to give it a name. And even though it feels weird talking about tumours or cancers to a little person, it's just a word. And it's a word that, especially for a little person, can help them because they know they don't have that and they're not going to get that and they can't catch that. And it helps you distinguish between ordinary sick and really sick. Another thing that we did is we bought him a truly magnificent over-the-top doctor's kit toy, which really empowered him when he was little. It made him feel powerful. He used to put on like a white coat and his name badge and carry this doctor's kit to the hospital to visit me, and he would feel like he could do something. And we really taught him to do things. And as he got older, he got taught to do different things. Like, here's what you can do to help mummy. And I think he has mostly handled it incredibly well. And he is, I'm not saying it's good to have a mum with a brain tumour. Avoid it if you can. But he is more empathetic than I think most kids his age are.
Yeah.
He has a deep level of empathy and understanding for other people's pain because he sees it all the time. You know, he knows that it's not unusual for me to say, Mum can't get out of bed right now, it hurts too much. And he has to get all these Transformers and sit on the bed and play on the bed because I can't get up. And he knows what music's going to cheer me up. He knows how to get a heat pack. He knows where my medicine's kept. He knows all this kind of stuff that most kids don't. You know, he always comes and sings songs at me when I have to give myself needles at nighttime. He's a kid with a lot of empathy, and most 5-year-olds, I don't think.
No.
Well, most 5-year-olds aren't expected to have that, and I wouldn't never have expected him to have that otherwise. So I think there are benefits. You know, I think you can try too hard to look for silver linings. You know, and would I take all of this back? Yeah, I would. I'd take it back in a second. I would have my life back in a second. But that doesn't mean there haven't been some good things that came out of it. And I think for him so far, there are some real positives. I think he's learnt a lot, and I feel really proud of him because he's an extraordinary kid. Like, if you said to him, if you found mummy and she was asleep and you couldn't wake her up, what would you do? He will talk you through how to call an ambulance, what he has to say on the phone. He knows all of that in detail. He knows where my medicines are if someone had to come to the house. Like, he is ready to go. In fact, I think he'd quite like it to happen. He's like so prepared.
Get his doctor's kit on and
yeah,
go to work.
he's legit. He knows what he's doing. Though his usual diagnosis is that you've got bees in your ears,
Oh, okay.
which is like a shocker of a condition.
Yeah, not that as well.
Oh dear. What? Can I just? When you first delivered that news, what do you first think about in that moment when you first find out you've got a brain tumour?
When I was delivered the news,
Yeah, when you were first told the news.
I don't know. I think so. I was told at the end of 2017, and I didn't have surgery till the end of Jan 2018. So it's almost 3 months of waiting. And I would say they were the worst few months of my life, far worse than any of the physical recoveries. I would do the physical recoveries over 10 times before I had to live that again. I think, looking back, I was dissociating to an extent. When I first heard the news, you know how they always say when a doctor tells you something, you only take in 2/3? I reckon I took in 1/10 of what she said. So it was a gynecologist who found the tumour. So she didn't have a lot to give me because it's not her specialty. She just knew that she'd got a scan back and you could see a tumour. So she used the word lesion. She said, "You've got a lesion on your brain." And I remember just sticking on that word and being like, "A cut? I've got a cut on my, what's that mean? Am I bleeding?" Like, I don't have any medical knowledge, or at least I didn't then. And, whereas my husband is, he works in medical negligence law. So he's got quite a good understanding for a non-doctor of this kind of stuff. So he knew what was going on. So they kept talking, and then I had to be like, "Sorry, what is a lesion?" And she said, "Oh, well, it's like a brain tumour." And I said, "Okay, is it cancer?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. We don't know." And she wrote down 2 really long words on a piece of paper, and she said, the radiographers think it's probably one of these 2 things, and I've referred you to a brain surgeon. It was a Monday afternoon, and she said, and you've got an appointment with him on Thursday afternoon. And I remember just thinking, how on earth do I get to Thursday? Like, what do I do? Do I just do nothing with this news until Thursday? So I don't have a good answer, because I heard the word lesion and I heard the word tumour, and I don't remember much else except just not really thinking it was possible. And about 5 or 6 hours later, I went into a mass panic and went, oh, my God, Ruffy's going to get this. Is this inherited?
Right.
And my husband had already Googled that, and he was like, neither of them can be inherited, so it's fine. He got there faster than me.
That was good anticipation by him.
He was there. He was there. And I've got to say, he has been, I hope he never listens to this because he doesn't need to hear this. He has been extraordinary, like unflappable, immovable the entire way through. I have barely seen him cry. I know he does. I just think he keeps that fear away from me, because in front of me, he has always been 100% confident that I was going to get through this. And I really needed that. I needed him to be that. I needed him to be the one person who wasn't scared, because a lot of people came and put their fear for me on me, and I found that really difficult, and he just refused. And not in a sort of bogus way, not in like a false optimism way, just in a, the data says you're going to be okay. Because more than half of the people who have this survive, so therefore you will. That was always his take. And even after my second brain surgery, I wasn't awake for any of this, so I don't remember it. I know it through stories. They thought that I might be blind when I woke up, because my tumour grows really close to the optic chiasm, so the point where you're sort of the link to both eyeballs cross. And the doctors came in and sort of said to my family, my parents, my sister and my husband, you need to figure out what you're going to say to her when she wakes up, because she's going to panic if she can't see, which is accurate. I would have panicked a lot. And my mum burst into tears, and my dad took my mum out of the room, and my sister was just sort of sitting there crying, going, what do we say? And my sister told me that Jeremy sat there for the next 4 hours Googling Braille services and how we'd have to adapt the house. Like, he just went straight into, she's going to want to know how she's going to learn to read again. She's going to want to know this. And he just went into action mode.
Wow.
And thankfully not blind. But he was ready to deal with that.
Yeah. An amazing man.
Yeah, he really hope he doesn't listen to this. Ego is fine. But he is, and he is a husband and a father and now a carer. And, you know, I didn't sign up for this and I didn't deserve this, but neither did he, because he married someone who looked very different. He married someone who behaved very differently. He married someone who lived very differently and experienced the world very differently. And he thought he also married an equal parent. And at a physical level, I am not that anymore. I try really hard to be, because when I'm on a good day, I give it everything. But I'm emotionally half the parent, but I'm physically not.
How'd you meet him?
Weirdly, we met at high school, but we exchanged about 7 words in 10 years.
Okay.
So we went to the same high school, but he was 4 years ahead of me. And then we went to the same university, but he was 4 years ahead of me. So I was quite good friends with Jeremy's brother when we were at high school. So I knew of him, but he was like cool and didn't talk to us because we were little and boring. I remember he was my house captain for sport, and I won the under 12 girls cross country. Thank you. And I remember he came up and he patted me on the back and said, "Good job, mate." And
Wow.
like all the year 7 girls were like, "Ah, he touched you." And I remember one of them was like, "Oh my God, he loves you. You're gonna get married." And a few years ago, I ran into a girl I hadn't seen since year 8, and she just came up and went, "Mate, you married Jeremy Smith." And I was like, "I know." She was like, "It's like as good as marrying a Backstreet Boy."
You've made it.
Oh dear, very funny. Well, I'm very interested. I know it sounds like a bit of an obvious question for this podcast, but I'm very interested to hear about your mental health off the back of everything that you have been through, continue to go through. How's your mental health, or how has it been throughout the journey?
Mixed. I think the best answer. The most intense period of mental illness, I think, was between finding out and the first surgery for me. It was I had a short but very intense period of being extremely unwell. And I don't necessarily have words for the kind of illness. I suppose it was an extreme anxiety reaction, but I was definitely dissociating for parts of it. I became completely convinced I was going to die in the surgery, and not like I might die, but obsessed with it. I think my very organised, prepare for anything brain went, okay, say there's 100 versions of this outcome. I can think my way through how I will deal with 98 of them, and there's 2 of them I can't deal with, and they are dying. And so I just focused on them because it was almost like my brain thought I could find a solution to them. And I really honestly couldn't think of anything else. And not for moments of my day, not for parts of my day, all of my days. Like I couldn't think about anything else. And I was in an awful way. And to the point that I spoke to Jez about it afterwards, my husband, and he said his biggest fear with me going into the surgery was that I would still be in that mental place when I woke up. Not that something bad would happen in the surgery. He was much more scared about my mental health than my physical health.
Yeah. So could people tell? Like, I mean, obviously your husband probably could, but is this something you were good at hiding?
I think partly I was good at hiding, partly. Further away from it, I think I was good at. I had days where I was good at hiding it. Like there were days I was able to go to work and I was able to function. I was hosting ABC radio in the few weeks leading up to the surgery, and I think I did pretty well at just getting on air and doing the job. But I remember one day I was on air and I interviewed Jelena Dokic, tennis player, and I was tennis obsessed as a teenager and I adored her. And so it was a real thrill to interview her. And then I saw her a few hours later in the corridor and I was like, oh my God, it's Jelena Dokic. And I went over and introduced myself and was like, I'm such a fan. And she just looked at me. She's so Eastern European. She was like, we have met 2 hours ago. Like, what's wrong with you? And, but I honestly just didn't know. Like, I think I would go on air for 3 hours doing national radio and I didn't really know what I said. I just sort of did the job in autopilot because I couldn't. Like I recorded goodbye messages to my son and to my husband. I went the full. I was there. I was expecting to die. Like I was saying goodbye to people. That was the worst of it. I think since then, I think it's got something to do with my control freak nature. But I was a lot more confident about the second surgery because I felt like, oh, well, I've done brain surgery before, despite the fact the second surgery was way more dangerous, way more involved, completely different surgery. But I was more confident because I felt like I knew the process. I knew how to go into hospital. I knew what to do. Other than that, the only time I've ever been to hospital was to have a baby. And so I felt more comfortable. I knew the nurses. I knew the team. I knew my surgeon. I knew how good he was. I was a lot calmer about it. I was still really worried, but I don't think my mental health was at risk. And then I got it in my head that I had fixed my mental health and I stopped talking to a psychologist. I was like, I'm fixed now. I've dealt with this. I just have to recover from the surgery and deal with everything. And I think it was in that period that I started to develop a really serious eating disorder. And it's really only been the last 6 months that I've kind of accepted that the way I was eating was not just about avoiding the consequences of my condition and was actually about what was going in my head as well. And that the two could be true, that those two, I think I sort of thought it's either an eating disorder or I'm just doing it because I have to, because of the way my body works now, rather than recognizing both things could be true at the same time. And yeah, my husband and my best mate had an intervention. No,
Who's your best mate?
Claire Bowditch,
okay.
who you've had on the podcast. And that was a good intervention by them. And I'm seeing someone really good who has been really, really helpful and has been extraordinary because I think, as a psychologist who deals with eating disorders, all of her normal tools to help solve some of what's going on for me are not available to her because I can't not eat the way I'm eating for physical health reasons.
Yeah.
You know, so she's having to totally remake things, and she's been really great.
But if you're
Get therapy, everybody.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I had someone actually message me the other day and said, "Can you please stop saying," there was a counsellor and she said, no, he said, "Can you please stop saying psychologist?" He said, "There's so many of us out there who can provide support." And so I just thought of that just then.
Yeah, that's true.
Therapist, whoever, social workers.
Whoever works for you, right?
Totally.
Actually, the person I'm seeing has worked as a psychologist and as a social worker, and she refuses to put words around what she does now. She's like, I'm some weird hybrid of it all, and I'm helping people. That's what I do. And she's excellent. So, I think that's been really important for me, as has the informal therapy of friends and family and being able to talk about it to people like my sister, who is extraordinary at trying to understand. I have a good friend who's an oncologist in Perth who has been amazing at helping me understand things like medical journals where you can easily misread them when you're not medical. And I've got a very dear friend who's become my friend since getting sick who has MS, and Astrid is the closest I've got to someone who really gets it because her brain's also betraying her. And she's also in a position where more disabilities are revealing themselves over time. And at the same time, you can't tell she's sick by looking at her. And it's the same with me. And that's a particular type of experience, I think, that comes with a lot of privilege because unlike someone who, say, uses a wheelchair or has lost their hair because of chemo, you can't tell we're sick. And so when we don't want to tell people, we don't have to. There's huge privilege there. But there's also disadvantage because no one's giving up their seat on the bus for me because I look like I'm fine. But some days I can be really faint and have blood pressure at the point where I really need to be horizontal. I need to be lying down. And if I ask someone for a chair, they think I'm being an arsehole.
What was your mental health like before all this happened? Would you say, is the experience of feeling like you've got an eating disorder and that obsession you had, is this a whole new experience to you?
I would say yes, it's a wholly new experience, but I definitely had some mental health flare-ups, I think would be a better way to put it, in the past. It wasn't an ongoing challenge of mine, but I had a year at work where I had really severe anxiety, and I had a period of sort of a death foreboding type experience just after I got engaged, weirdly, which is when you're supposed to be happy, and I wasn't. Poor Jez was freaking out. He's like, "What'd I do? I thought this is what you wanted." But I never liked this, I suppose. But yeah, I certainly had, I had a psychologist to go to when I got sick. So I had someone I had a relationship with already who knew me, who knew my experiences, who I didn't see super regularly, but who I had seen regularly in the past, and I had someone to call. And I think that was really helpful that I had someone who knew me before I was sick, who was able to sort of know what my equilibrium was. Whereas I think if I'd walked into the office of someone for the first time when I got sick and said, I'm not well and my mental health suffering, they wouldn't have known what I was like pre-brain tumour diagnosis. Yeah. And the other thing is that I experienced a really, really severe fear of flying in the 6 months before my tumour was diagnosed, which has disappeared since the surgery. Really? So, yeah, they believe that the tumour must have been pressing on hormones in a way that fueled an anxiety that for me manifested as a fear of flying, despite being at the time a platinum frequent flyer in both airlines. Like I flew a lot and I developed a fear of flying, an obsessive fear of flying. And since the surgery, it's just gone.
Wow.
Gosh.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it?
So the brain's I don't know. For me, I think we all know, intelligent people who care, know that mental health is not something of your own making, that mental illness is something that is chemical and is caused by what's going on in your brain, the same way physical ill health causes problems in the brain, but we still value them differently. And some of my dearest friends who are really practiced in the science and the psychology of mental health and who understand that mental health is underfunded and under-recognised and undervalued as something that is really debilitating for people, even them said things like, when I first got sick, would make comments like, yeah, but you've got you've got a brain tumour. And it'd be like I said earlier, I would have the surgeries and the recovery over again 10 times to avoid that period of mental ill health that came before it. And that period of mental ill health was all about this obsession with possible death that in all likelihood was not going to happen. So it was something in my mind, and that experience was worse. That experience was worse, and it was worse than the pain I experience now. It was worse than all the recovery. It was worse than all those periods in hospital learning how to stand up again and how to walk again and constant vomiting. It was worse than the period I had where my brain didn't know how to be satiated by water. So I felt like I'd been in the desert for 10 days without water, and I was crying because I was so thirsty, even though I was perfectly hydrated. It was worse than all of that. And yet we still treat mental health like it's just kind of in your head and you should get over yourself. I think it's harder. In my experience, it has been harder.
Gosh, that's really fascinating. So if you could go back to the moment you were first diagnosed with this, and you could tell yourself something as like some kind of advice or something to prepare yourself, what would you say?
I'd say you're going to see Ruffy turn 6 next month, because that was the biggest fear. And like almost like a jealous anger. And I even had this sort of jealousy of Jeremy. I had this I knew that if I died, it was going to be hard on him, obviously. But I felt like even in the worst outcome, you get to watch our kid grow up. You get to be at every birthday. You get to watch him learn to ride a bike. You get to watch him go to school on the first day. You get all this joy that I'm going to miss out on. And I think when I first got sick, I had a really deep fear of dying. And I think I had that before I got sick. Now I have a deep fear of dying before my time. Whereas the actual fear of death has kind of evaporated. I just want to be there for all of it. I just want to be there for all the good stuff. I just have mad FOMO, I think. And, I think of all the things that have happened since I got sick. I did watch my kid learn to ride a bike. I was there for the running into the house, screaming, fist pumping, I did it moment. I was there filming all of those big moments in his life. I got to walk him to school on the first day and sob the whole way home. And, I've had all these big moments with him, and I just want more of them. That's all I want. I just want more of them.
That's really beautiful. That was one of the first things I felt when our son was born, our first child. I became very aware for the first time in my life of the fact that, I'm going to die one day. I mean, I always knew I was going to, but I never thought about it. Yeah. And I was like, no, it's going to happen. But I didn't obsess over it, but I became very, very aware that one day I'm going to die. And it's something that never happened before I had a child. And all of a sudden having a child brings this, I don't know.
Yeah.
Makes it very real.
How old's your eldest?
So Benji's 4.
Yeah. Has he started asking the big questions yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned, I said something was going to die to Penny, and he heard, and he asked, where I was putting him to bed, and he asked if he was going to die. And I said, yeah, one day. And he said, I don't want to. And he was so upset about it. And I said, no, it's a long way. And he said, is it a very long way? And I said, yeah, I think it will be. But then I was like, how do I answer this question? Because I don't know. And
I don't have an answer.
Yeah. It's awful. And then he was saying, what about you and Mummy? And he said, and he was saying, who will die first out of me and you? And I was saying, well, I was like, I'm not ready for this.
I don't want to say we don't know.
I'm not. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, because Mum's a librarian, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, Mum, what book would you like? Mum, I need a book for this. Mum always provides books for. So yeah, but he has started asking those difficult questions.
They're really confronting.
Yeah,
they're really confronting, and yeah, I was more scared of having that conversation than I think Ruffy was because I'd built it up. I knew it was coming and I was waiting for the day. And he lost his first great-grandparent at the start of 2020. And so I knew the questions were coming. And just before, it's not funny, just before Fred died, he had a very good run. He was almost 100. He was very close.
That's good.
Just before he died, there was a tree around the corner from us that had been struck by lightning, and Ruffy was really distressed by the fact the tree was dead. And I was like, good analogy. And so I used the tree analogy to introduce the idea that we all die and that Fred was very sick, and I knew the inevitable was coming. And so when Fred did die, Ruffy was quite upset, and we explained it. We talked about the tree, and now he seems to have equated the tree with human beings. So regularly when we walk past the tree, he'll be like, I'm so sad Fred has died. And I'll be like, yeah, me too, man. He goes, and the tree. And you're like, okay. I didn't mean to make
I lent on the analogy a bit hard.
They're not equivalents, man. I'm sorry. I screwed up. I tried really hard.
We do our best though, don't we?
Yeah, trying. I also really messed up the racism discussion. Anyway, I'm trying. I'm a parent who tries. So is my husband. But
I'd love to hear about that.
Okay, everyone has to bear with me. I'm trying not to. Please don't judge us. So my husband was with my little boy one day. He was about 3.5, I think, maybe just 4 when this happened. And they were together. And out of nowhere, he says, hey, Dad, we're white. And he's like, sorry? And he says, well, you and me, we are white. And he goes, well, yep, that's accurate. And he goes, and Mummy is white? And Jez goes, well, no, actually, no, Mummy's a person of colour. And if we're going on sort of how someone looks, we would say Mummy is light brown. And Ruffy goes, no, I don't think so. I think that's wrong. We will go home and Mummy will tell you the truth. And so Jez had texted me about this, and I went into full excellent parent mode. And I sat down with all of the primary colours, and we did how you mix red and blue together and you get purple, and you mix this colour and this colour. And then I was like, okay, now we're doing it with skin tone. And I sat down and I was like, okay, let's look at what colours Granny's skin is. And I got out this like peachy colour, and what colour Ab, which is what we call, my dad's name is Abel, and he gets called Ab, so as the grandfather. And I got out this really dark brown, my dad's Indian, and we showed how we mix them all together through generations. And I was saying, now when we get to you, the paint is almost a sort of pinky light brown, but we know who's in there, right? We know all the different grandparents who went into making you. So you've got a bit of each grandparent in you, don't you? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, God, I'm good at parenting. Like, I'm just such a pro. And then 3 days later, he's walking down the street and there's a guy with darker skin walking past him. And he goes, oh, look, Dad, he's got a bit of Ab in him too. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yep. That happened. My 4-year-old, seriously racist. And we had to sit down and be like, oh, my God, you could never say that again. That's really offensive. Anyway, best intentions, poorly named grandfather. Like, couldn't have picked it was going to happen.
Good story.
But it was, yeah, anyway. I thought I think I got too smug. It was like the universe was like, don't think you're good at this.
Yeah,
No.
you needed
No one's good at this.
You can never predict what's going to come out of their mouths.
No, they're next level.
Oh, so good. Josh, I've jumped in and not given you a chance to ask any questions at all, sorry.
It's I've wanted to, but it's just been such a wonderful discussion. I didn't want to jump in and go, oh, I've got something to ask. I've got hopefully it's not too personal to ask, but was there, and I don't want to be falling into the trap of separating the physical and mental thing because obviously it all happens in the brain. Was there significant any kind of cognitive, because obviously you're such an intelligent person and have such a like you're so fast and quick-witted and brilliant. Was there any drawback there as well with the surgery?
Yeah, not with the surgeries, but with the radiation. That's a really good question, and I haven't really talked about it much publicly, just because it's not done yet. And I'm aware of that.
Okay.
Like the radiation
You're still in it.
is still active, and usually for about 3 years after it finishes, and I'm 2 years next month. And I can feel the difference. People around me other than my family can't tell the difference so far. I think I'm pretty good at covering it. Yeah. But I often, you know that feeling you experience, or at least how I used to experience, was if I couldn't find the word, I was almost in a mental space where I could see the words around me and I was like, I can't find the one I want. Where is it? I get to that now and everything's black. I'm not searching for anything. But if I get stuck and I can't find a word, it's almost like everything's blank and the word just does not exist for me.
Yeah.
Particularly names and faces and words that I heard for the first time or experienced for the first time or started using a lot for the first time in the kind of 6 months after radiation are the worst.
Okay.
I find that really confronting, especially the fact it might get worse. I've seen a neuropsychologist about it who sort of said you've definitely been impacted, but not enough that we would medicate you to fix it, which is a frustrating answer.
Yeah. Is that scary?
It's sort of because it's hit my sense of self, I think. And I think it's also one of the reasons I've pushed myself more into writing the last few years, because you can't remember the word. You can just go away and wait until the word comes back or someone tells you what it is. Whereas I get nervous now on TV that I'll forget someone important's name. Like, what if I forget who the treasurer is? I know who the treasurer is. It's all right. Or what if I can't find the right descriptor? And I catch myself now and then. There's been a few times in this podcast where I have forgotten a word and I can't find the word I want.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm mentally going, but what is it? And I'll just use a substitute. And it's fine, so no one knows but me. But I kind of worry it'll get worse to the point that I can't find a substitute. It makes me really anxious. Yeah.
And I also imagine that, your brain has done such wonderful things for you your whole life. Like, it's been it's given you the life that you've got, obviously.
Yeah.
So that must be really hard. We couldn't tell at all throughout that discussion, but that must be so hard to not be able to get to the word that you really want to use.
Yeah, I think it's, I spoke earlier about looking different. I don't think I was someone who defined myself by how I looked, but it was part of how I defined myself. And so I think looking substantially different to how I used to has been really difficult to get my head around. But I define myself a lot more by how I think. And if that goes further downhill, I think I will find that really hard. But the doctors have sort of said, if anything, it'll get better. You've probably got as bad as it's going to get. And over time, your brain does heal itself and your brain will want to fix things like that. And, I'm obsessive on the apps in the morning, the memory apps and and all the little, I'm playing my games, trying to get myself back to where I was. But it is confronting, and it's easy to start to use really derogatory phrases towards yourself, like I'm getting dumber, which is of course both rude and inaccurate
and unhelpful.
But sometimes it does feel like that. I'm worst when I haven't had enough sleep. That it almost gets further exacerbated. Yeah.
I'm glad you've got writing.
Yeah, well, and it's like I feel like it's a real privilege to be like I had the kind of portfolio career, I suppose, where I could be like, all right, I'm not going to do much TV anymore because I feel uncomfortable about how I look and I feel nervous about live TV and saying the wrong thing. So I can just not do much for a while. I do it occasionally, but I don't do it like I used to. And I can do more podcasting and I can do more writing and I can do things where I feel more comfortable. And that's a real privilege. Like, I know that most people who have my tumour don't work. And when I'm on the forums, because there's not many of us, so we kind of get together online, when I'm there, I think it's about 10% of them who have a job.
Wow.
And it makes you so grateful for being in a position where, if I'd been an athlete or if I'd been a labourer or I'd been a hairdresser who had to be on her feet all day, this would be a really complex thing to manage. But like thankfully I had a job where I could kind of move stuff around to make it work for me.
Yeah. I was really struck by it's so obvious that it probably doesn't even warrant mentioning, but the way that you were talking about your mental health suffering or being in the worst state. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase
Acute?
it. But
I don't know.
Yeah. When there was no control. And then since then when you've been given medication to take or things to do, it seems like that. And these apps with brain training and stuff like that. Would you say that there's a link between your mental health and being able to do something? Because when you were diagnosed, there was what do you do? I mean, while you're waiting for that first...
That's really insightful. But yeah, absolutely. I think the only times I ever felt calm in that first little period, I remember the day I sat down and cancelled everything in my diary after the surgery. I felt really good. Even though it was sad to cancel things, I was doing something to prepare. And I got really obsessed with running in the few months before the first surgery because I was like, well, what can I do? I can be really fit and really healthy. I was in the best shape of my entire life going into that first surgery. I think me and some of the family all felt like maybe I'm going to walk in there and they're going to say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. Like I was running 12 Ks the day before I had brain surgery. I was in a great space. My sister, who's super fit, was struggling to keep up with me because that was how well I was at the time.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel real. I felt much sicker after the surgery. But yeah, I think I am someone, certainly, and I think everyone's different, but if I can do something, I am in a better headspace. And I think I've learnt since that even if I can't do something for myself, if I can be doing something for someone else, that's actually just as good. Like, a lot of mates used to say when I was sort of sick, oh, I don't want to burden you with it. Like, it's nothing like what you're going through kind of comments. And I'd be like, tell me your small problem. Like, tell me your solvable problem and let's work on it. Like, we can actually fix this. Yeah. We can fix the fact that you're unhappy with your job or that your kid's being a brat or whatever. This is solvable. And it was, I actually liked that because it made me feel powerful. Like, I think. So, no, I hadn't thought about it that way, but I think that's absolutely right. I feel better when I'm doing and I'm taking steps and I know I'm a very good patient. The same way I was a very good school student who always sat straight and did what they were told. Yeah. I am that patient who you come in after you've been away for 3 months and you're like, I did everything I was told to do. Why isn't it working?
And I did some research and I've done some other things as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other point I wanted to say, and I really apologise if I'm just, you may have misspoke before, but you said a phrase that really stuck with me. And I think you may have meant to say something else, who knows? But you said
Jamila will know.
Yeah. I would have my life back in seconds, talking about, and I thought that was, I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was a slip, but the way you phrased that as opposed to my old life back in seconds. And I wonder how you reconcile looking forward now, moving forward.
He's good, isn't he?
This is
he should have more of your job.
This is I know.
And I don't want to pull you up on it.
I think it probably was a slip. I probably meant to say old life, but at the same time, I think the true intention probably is reflected in that sentence. I do feel. I think I'm confident, fairly confident, I will get to a place of comfort with how my body works now and how it behaves and how it looks and how it feels. I'm not there at all. Like, I am very much a work in progress on my mental health and my physical health. The disabilities haven't fully emerged. I like to hope they have. I hope this is it. But I'm not at peace and I'm not comfortable and I'm certainly not proud. My good friend Stella Young, who died 7 years ago now, I think, she used to talk about being proud, being disabled and proud. And I think I'm on the path to being proud, but I'm not there yet. And I am still I don't think I'm bitter, but I can still fall into why me thinking sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And occasionally when things become too much or I am prevented from doing something I really wanted to do because my body isn't up to it or my brain doesn't think I'm good enough to do it anymore because I don't look right or I don't sound right or I don't act right or I don't think right, whatever it might be, when I get in the way of myself, I think that bitterness creeps in and it does feel like a different person. I still feel like I'm 35 now. I still feel like I am 31, which is how old I was when I was diagnosed. I still feel like I'm waiting to live the life I was supposed to live at that age rather than this other life that's come about. And while I don't want to trade the good things, because there's been some amazing things, like friends and family who've stepped up, new friends who've come into my life. I think a new empathy for people with similar experiences, and a slowing down, which was probably good for me, if anything. The bad still outweighs the good for me. And so it's hard not to – I kind of feel like the old version of me kind of just – it's not like she died, but she got stopped. Like her life got cut off, the trajectory got cut off, the plans got cut off. And I do feel different because I have a different level of confidence. I have a different attitude to myself. I have a different outlook on the world. And I really miss being how I used to be. And that's not something you're supposed to say in the disability community. You know, you're not supposed to say, I wish, you know, you're supposed to be proud and accepting. And I'm accepting and I want to be proud, but I'm not yet.
I'm sure you don't go from your old life to being proud and accepting quickly. I'm sure you'll get there, but it's so incredibly, I don't know if this is the right word, but brave, or just shows such integrity and honesty for you to talk about it openly like this while you're still in it. So
thank you.
Thank you, and because I'm sure there are other people out there who are in it right now and trying to get to that point of being proud and aren't there yet, and it must be really refreshing. And hopefully it's refreshing for them to hear that, you know, it's a journey.
Yeah, I think we have a problem in that as a society, in that there are more, oh my God, I just said as a society, but there are more and more people, I think, who are willing to talk about being proud or talk about an evolution, but we all talk about it in retrospect. It's like, I've experienced horrific mental health, but I'm well now. You can be like me. Or I've experienced this, but it's okay now. I've come to terms with it and I love my body, or I love this, or I feel like, and I am a definite work in progress. And I think there are some things I've gotten a lot better at. And I think there are things I am still working on. And there are some aspects, I think, where I am first step in 1,000 steps. But I worry about us all selling ourselves as finished products to the world, as fully evolved humans when we're not.
Yeah, Penny.
I also think I was also going to say, I also think that's a pretty boring idea, to be a finished product. Like, surely the whole thing of life is to be, you're changing all the time. Like, you've got no choice about it. Your brain's changing, whether it's through something really traumatic and tough or whether it's just going through as is. The idea of being finished and proud is a pretty boring idea, I think.
Yeah, and it's often the small things, I think, that upset me the most, not the big things. Like, I think that sometimes the bigger realities of my illness, like, you know, ending up in hospital after an adrenal crisis, once I know everything's going to be okay, I'm usually all right with that. I'm like, I know what happens now. I know how many bags of fluids I need. I know how much cortisol needs to be pumped into my system. I know which ward I'm going to. I know who has the good biscuits. I know what's going to happen now. I almost feel safe in that place. But, you know, yesterday I woke up in the morning and my bedroom's upstairs, and that was a bit rude. Our bedroom's upstairs. Jeremy lives there too. Sorry, Jess.
My next question was, where
does he sleep? Outside.
Oh, yeah.
I walked down he wasn't there. That's why he was downstairs. Yeah. I walked down the stairs and I couldn't walk down one step at a time because I was in so much pain. I had to kind of put both feet onto each step because my knees wouldn't let me go far enough because I was in so much pain. And I just got to the bottom of the stairs and I was just bawling my eyes out because it was like, what happened to me? What happened to this body that I was just so used to and took for granted because it moved well and it felt fine and it recovered, and it was like I aged very quickly. It was like I went from 31 to 75 in terms of how my body felt and operated for me. And we all go through that if we're lucky enough to live a long life, but it just happens so fast.
With no warning.
Yeah, with no warning, and it was such a shock, and I feel like I'm still living with the whiplash.
Yeah. Well,
great way of saying it.
Penny,
and God.
Penny, my wife, we always send her these episodes before they come out to listen to, and I know she's going to absolutely love this because she always says, I love it when the person's still in the fight and they're happy to own that. And that's what you've done today. So thank you so much. I agree with what Josh said, that this will be so, I don't know if empowering is the right word, but for people listening who are in that same fight right now, I just think it's going to be to know they're not alone and have someone like you to say, yeah, I'm still working my way through it. And yesterday I was sitting down crying because I think it's so powerful. So, yeah, I mean, you said you're not resilient. I disagree wholeheartedly. But thank you so much for giving up your time today and being so raw and vulnerable with us. It means a lot.
Oh, thank you. And thank you both for such kind questions.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for the cookies. They were delicious.
No worries.
Sure were. Yeah, I've still got half one to go. I'm very excited.
Thank you.
Awesome. That was great.
Wow. Okay. First of all, there is a cookie for me?
There is.
There is one. Okay.
And they are so nice.
Is that rude if straight off the bat I just grabbed that?
No. It's
Where
behind
is
you.
it,
It's
in
right
all
behind you.
seriousness?
I think it's right behind you. Oh, no, it's just over there on
I
the couch.
moved over there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually do want it. I actually do want it.
It's really delicious. Just on the couch, just there.
Sorry. Just a snack.
The
May as well.
Rizvi cookie.
A Rizvi cookie. Okay. thank
What
you.
I liked about it most is it's the perfect proportion of chocolate to non-chocolate.
Did you bake these?
Yeah, I'm guessing so. Yeah,
I think there's two types of chocolate, potentially.
Yeah, it looks like
White
there's
chocolate
white and dark.
Yeah.
I reckon that's macadamias or hazelnuts or something. Anyway, it's probably a detail that we can avoid going into. Bless you, Josh.
Sorry.
Okay, so Jamila, there's just so much to talk about here because, I mean, I like I said before, I didn't really know a lot about Jamila's story, and hearing that, I mean, I think it's like, I think you said, Josh, it's like hearing, or maybe you said Hugh, I can't remember, but hearing someone talk about the struggles that they're currently in, like often when in the people we've had on the show previously, you're often hearing about the struggles that they went through in the past. Like there's been a bunch of those examples, even if people are still dealing with mental health struggles now as a result of that. Maybe we are often hearing about the story that happened, and while that is the case with Jamila, like she's still kind of in it, and like with Josh, the absolute hit it out of the park questions that you had, we heard even more about like how she's still struggling with certain aspects of it now, and the fear of it getting worse even today. Which really when you listen to her talk, she sounds so confident, and she probably is very confident, but she seems so put together and so self-assured, which she is, but there's still obviously the fear that she carries with her, and the struggles that she has, and the insecurities with certain things. And I just think it's really not great for her, but incredible to hear, and very generous of her to talk about that. I think to many people on the face of it, if you didn't know too much about all that, you would see Jamila Rizvi on TV if she was just talking, or you met her in the street or wherever, and saying like, well, she went through a tough time, but she's fine now.
Yeah. I think the thing that struck me that I wanted to talk about off the back of that, and won't surprise many people know I don't know much about brain tumours and all that kind of stuff, the medical side. And so I don't want to delve too far into that and the implications on mental health through that. I think
I can cover that if you want.
Yeah.
Give it a crack.
Yeah.
The thing that I kept thinking about was the book that we've talked a little bit about on this podcast. Well, we had him as a guest, Johan Hari. We had him in season 2 talking about his book, Lost Connections. I couldn't help but think about something he talks about, which is, and I was umming and ahhing, do I try and summarise or actually read this section of the book? I think I might just read. There's a couple of paragraphs I want to read because I think they're so relevant here. He says, in the 1970s, a truth was accidentally discovered about depression, one that was quickly swept aside because its implications were too inconvenient and too explosive. American psychiatrists had produced a book that would lay out in detail all the symptoms of different mental illnesses so they could be identified and treated in the same way across the United States. was called the DSA, or the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. In the latest edition, they laid out 9 symptoms that a patient has to show to be diagnosed with depression, like, for example, decreased interest in pleasure or persistent low mood. For a doctor to conclude you were depressed, you had to show 5 of these symptoms over several weeks. So the manual was sent across the US, and doctors began to use this manual to diagnose people with depression and mental illness. After a while, they came back to the authors, though, and pointed out something that had been really bothering them, and that was if they followed this guide, they had to diagnose every grieving person who came to them as depressed and start giving them medical treatment. So if you lose someone, it turns out that these symptoms will come to you automatically. So the doctors wanted to know, are we supposed to start drugging them all, everyone who's lost someone, the bereaved people in America? The authors conferred, and they decided that there would be a special clause added to this list of symptoms of depression. None of this applies, they said, if you have lost somebody you love in the past year. In that situation, all these symptoms are natural and not a disorder. It's called the grief exception, and it seemed to resolve the problem. So I won't keep reading, but what they then went, after a while, they came back and said, well, why is it just if you lose someone? What about
any sort of trauma or
what about if you if your partner leaves you after 30 years of marriage? What if you have a serious illness or injury? What if you have all these things, grieving that your life hasn't turned out the way that you thought it might?
And they're like, we've already printed the manuals, so it's going to cost too much to print again. So let's just keep it as is.
So I'll just read this very quickly what they said here. So all over the world, they're being encouraged to tell patients that depression is, in fact, just the result of a spontaneous chemical imbalance in your brain. It's produced by low serotonin or a natural lack of some other chemical. It's not caused by your life. It's caused by your broken brain. Some of the doctors began to ask how this fitted with the grief exception. If you agree that the symptoms of depression are a logical and understandable response to one set of life circumstances, losing a loved one, might they not be an understandable response to other situations? What we're just saying there, what if you lose your job, that kind of stuff. The questions I'm asking you was like, what mental illness have you experienced off the back of what you were going through? I just wonder if, there's the people call post-traumatic stress disorder. I just wonder if there's a healthier narrative to have off the back of, like, I think Johan goes on to talk about we should maybe call it something like a stress reaction. So that someone feels like it's very normal to experience problems mentally off the back of something traumatic. I mean, she said then there in the interview just then that she feels like she didn't get to live the life of her. She automatically feels like she's aged to, like, she's having the health problems of a 60, 70-year-old or 70 or 80-year-old. I'm sure she's grieving for part of her life that she feels like she's lost. She, as Josh picked up on, she said, what was her wording exactly? She said,
if I could get my life back in, I would do it
rather than my old life back again.
Yeah.
I'm sure she is grieving losing part of her life. I think the language then to say that she has post-traumatic stress or she has a mental illness because of that, I feel like the language to have a really big stress reaction, I feel like for me, if I was told I had a stress reaction, that would give me a lot more power to think that I can work my way through this. There are things I can do.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. What I'm experiencing right now is really normal.
Yeah. How does that, is this similar to, Hugh, when, like, you talk about all the time moving up and down the mental health spectrum? Is that the spectrum?
Yeah.
So you know, and I mean, you'll explain, I don't know why I'm going to try and explain this.
Go for it.
But
you've had to listen to me so many times. I reckon you'll be able to do it.
No, well, but it's like, was it 3 plus 3 to -3 and everything between? Is that, or 5? Is it?
+5,
Plus
-5,
5, -5.
0 being neutral, where you're not happy, but you don't have a mental illness.
Yeah. So I really honestly won't try and explain this, but essentially the mental health spectrum is you move up and down depending on your life situation.
Yeah.
So is it sort of similar to that, where it's like when something traumatic happens in your life, you move down, but that doesn't mean that you can't. That's not for life. You can move back up again.
Exactly right. I mean, like, Prince Harry is really passionate about the topic of mental health, as everyone knows, and he's one of the first people I heard say, "Do we have to call it post-traumatic stress disorder? Can we just drop the disorder?" Like, surely experiencing stress surely experiencing a setback mentally and emotionally is a normal response to something traumatic. And I think people are feeling like it's normal. Like, I mean, Jamila might be at this point already, but understanding that it is normal to experience challenges, I think it's a much more empowering, and it's a much more generous and accurate way of describing a response to something extremely traumatic like Jamila has been through and is continuing to go through. I think it's really important to mention also that, having said all that, there was no point where Jamila was making it sound like what she was going through is abnormal. It's something that she's working her way through, but she wasn't ashamed of it. She wasn't embarrassed about it. She certainly didn't think that there was something wrong with her for having these mental health conditions. I think I just say that for people out there who have been through something really traumatic, who are then feeling shame about experiencing mental ill health off the back of that. I think it's just, this message is more for you that if you've been through something really challenging or traumatic or something difficult in your life, and because of that you're struggling with your mental health, important to remember that what you're having is, I think, better described as a stress reaction.
Yeah, no need to be confused. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's normal, and we're certainly not attempting to minimise your experience of mental ill health at the moment. It's just acknowledging for what it is and then seeking help, where it's a counsellor or psychologist or whoever, but getting the help that you need is really important.
So that would be hard, obviously, but when something so say it's like a breakup. So say it's like a breakup with a partner after 30 years, like you said, and that breakup happens, and then like the sort of more often than not, the worst of it is behind you. And then you're like, okay, well now you start rebuilding, you try and figure out whatever it is that you've lost, you try and find that in your new life. So then you can sort of relatively, you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel in a sense after a while maybe, and you do slowly move back up, hopefully. But in Jamila's case, where she still continues to struggle now, even though she dropped way down in that time, like she talked about before she actually found out what was going on, when she talked about that really tough time between, being told that there's a lesion on her brain to then actually going to the brain surgeon and finding out what was going on. She was right down. But then I guess slowly you'd hope she can kind of get back up, and then there's been struggles along the way. But this is a very long explanation, but then at what stage, what if you're not moving up?
Well, my point is that I think people would feel more empowered, feeling like what is happening to them is not, whether or not you, so for Jamila, for example, whether or not she moves up or down the mental health spectrum and is able to, I'm more thinking purely from the point of view in this instance that to know that what you're experiencing is a normal response to what you've been through. Yeah. Like, it's not that you are ill, not that you're sick. What you're experiencing is a sign that you are normal, and this is a normal response. It would be abnormal if you were totally fine right now. Yeah, this is normal what you're going through. Yeah, that's as far as when you recover and how much you recover. I'm more concerned with this instance with Jamila of just, as I said, she might already feel this, but just knowing that is normal. I mean,
one of the things that just really kind of, really hit me during that is, so the condition that she now has, which is I forget the term for it, but the condition which is causing her to put on weight, and that she, is that, like, you go through the brain tumour, and then as a kicker, you get this other thing, which is then something you then have to live with. But like, what a kick in the guts!
Yeah, it's shocking.
It's just so unfair.
Well, you were thinking about that from a point of view of mental and physical health.
Yeah. Well, it's related to that, and also it was, I guess, more thinking about the stuff when she was talking about how we put physical health on a hierarchy. When her friends were like, "Oh, but you've got a tumour."
Oh yeah.
And putting that on a hierarchy above mental health, and I was going to run this past her, but it just didn't seem quite right. But
and you're already on such a high, like you were going so well. It would have been like to risk it all.
Yeah, exactly.
You already won the interview.
That's not accurate at all.
Yeah,
please don't talk.
Josh, you've got the $32,000. You sure you want to risk it all and play for 64?
So I'll do it now. I'll play for 64 now.
Good.
So it occurred to me when she was talking about this that when you have any kind of physical pain, that's always going to be processed in your brain. So you could have an acute thing like a stub toe, cut yourself, brain tumour, as serious as you can imagine or as simple and small as you can imagine. It's all going through the brain and it's just an acute sense of pain. But when you have a mental health issue, that is clouding everything that goes through it. So your cut, your stub toe, whatever, is therefore getting processed through the brain that has got a total clouding of, be it depression, anxiety, whatever you happen to be going through. So
does that affect the way that you feel the pain?
Well, it just simply from a processing point of view has to be processed through the lens of your depression or anxiety or whatever it is.
Okay.
So therefore it seems weird to me that we put physical illnesses on a hierarchy above mental illnesses as if they're more serious, because the whole thing is that the mental illness is at the top and then the physical illnesses are below that, getting processed by that brain.
Yep.
So why we think that physical illness is above that seems back to front to me.
Yeah.
Well, I can see why you were thinking about that, because she said that the worst part was the mental anguish and the anxiety that went after the diagnosis. Before that was worse. That was the worst part for her. But yet there's always such a big, I see it in sport all the time. Like an athlete will get a niggle, like their knee doesn't feel right, straight to the physio, find out what's going on. But if they don't feel right in their head, they'll just leave it and go, nah. And you'll wait a couple of years, 3 years, some people more than that, to go and see a psychologist or a counsellor or a therapist. But when it's a physical thing, it's just like, I better get this checked straight away.
Having said that, I don't know. I've got no qualifications whatsoever. I have no idea if what I said's accurate. It just occurred to me as a thought.
We'll cut that bit out because I think it's good for people to think that you're an expert. It'll mean more.
Dr. van Cuylenburg is. Yeah, I mean, everything we've just said is probably, we're going a little bit beyond our level of expertise, just from stuff that we've read, stuff that we've heard, and it was very much for me front of mind from what Jamila was saying. But I'm not discrediting everything we've just said, but just we're not psychologists and doctors and psychiatrists.
Probably safe to discredit most of the things I've said. But I think most people are doing that as I speak anyway. Because as soon as I start speaking with a serious voice, I imagine most people are like, here we go. Here we go.
I love your serious contributions. My favourite, though, was when you said that, what were we talking about? And you said, it's just like a mosquito bite.
What was that again?
What was that for?
Idiot.
I can't remember.
It was so good. It was good.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say that this episode.
Yeah, OCD. You said OCD was like a mosquito. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. No, the analogy was good. It actually worked, but it just was a funny one.
Yeah, it's just probably an incredibly insensitive comparison.
Anyway, huge thank you to Jamila and Josh. I thank you for really elevating that interview to the next level. Seriously,
I think it was Jamila that did that.
No, she obviously did, but you really brought the best out of her, I thought.
Yeah,
well, you're very kind, but she's this. Thanks, Jamila.
Yeah, but Josh, you win.
We're trying to make the bet.
Thanks, Jamila.
Well, yeah, thanks, Jamila, and that was just so fascinating. We will continue to do. So we've got a few, like throughout the rest of the year, we've got a bunch more episodes, and we're going to be doing more of the vulnerability episodes, more Academy of Imperfection episodes. So we're going to try and make it we'll try and distinguish them a little bit more, because is it a bit confusing still, do you think?
I think people just click on it and listen. I don't think they even really care.
Yeah, okay.
I think the order is original format, Vulnerability House, Academy of Imperfection. That's the way we'll do it.
Yeah.
And we'll just keep rolling through that.
Yeah. Well, we do more vulnerability episodes. You know what we should do? We should get a guest to do a vulnerability house.
If you got
a guest in.
Yeah. Any suggestions we will take. I don't know how people are meant to give us suggestions, but
yeah, I don't know either. Let's just not take any.
Okay. We'll think of people ourselves.
Well, I guess your Instagram in your DM inbox.
I feel so bad about this, but I'm really struggling to keep up. And people write the most amazing, nice things, and I cannot say how much I appreciate them. But I'm so far behind. I'm trying, but I do appreciate the lovely. Yeah,
well, you can just people can send to me as well, because I've I'm probably pretty close to full, but yeah, I'll definitely clear some space if you have just it'd be lovely to hear from you. Lovely to hear from anyone and send a message or two.
You're about to get inundated.
Favorite bits, top 5 bits, top 5 bits I've said this episode. Yeah, or top 3 if that's easier.
You know how we interviewed we advertised via Instagram for a nanny the other day.
Yeah.
And it was like 70 people applied,
Yes.
which is amazing, incredible applications.
You and Penny, yeah.
Penny Olive for a nanny, but someone wrote, not a massive fan of kids, but pretty keen for some work.
Oh wow,
that was her application. Just so tempted to get them around and find out what they're about.
You'd be safer in my hands. So, thanks a lot. We're going to be back in a couple of weeks, another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Josh's vulnerability house is next.
Oh, it is.
And it is a beauty.
It's an absolute
not a beauty. It's heartbreaking, but it's a beauty of a vulnerability.
Yeah, but sensational content, though, isn't it? Here,
that's what it's about.
Absolutely got him a ripper.
Why do we have to put it after the Ben Crow episode when our listenership is growing and suddenly?
This is the top. This is the perfect place to put it. Perfect.
All right.
Great. Thanks.
See you then, guys.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Can I be a fascination?
Hugh, it's Ryan. God, I have had the weirdest afternoon. Firstly, that chat with Jamila was so great, so thank you for that. But wow, I mean, those questions from Josh, he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. I know we talked about it, but I actually used my new time machine to go back and listen to them again because they were so good. But then that was stupid because I ran into my past self and had to explain why I was back in time, and then he was confused and said, "Why didn't you just rewind the episode?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, good point, me." But then he wanted to return the time machine because it was broken, but then I said, "You can't do that because then I won't be able to get back to the future." And anyway, blah blah blah. Really weird afternoon, but anyway, sorry mate, I'm absolutely rambling. I'll let you go and I'll see you soon. It's Ryan from the Present podcast.
To call back, press 22. To replay message, press 1. To reply.
If this episode has triggered anything for you around mental health, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is brought to you by the Resilience Project, produced by Ryan Shelton, Josh and Hugh van Cuylenburg. A very special thank you also to No Mono for allowing us to use their track Keep On as the theme for this podcast.
I hear the echo down the hall, like you were never there at all. Just leave me down here